Picture this scenario because I guarantee we have all been there at some point, and honestly, it is probably the most frustrating feeling in the world. It's Friday afternoon, you just got the notification that your paycheck hit your account, and for a brief, fleeting moment, you feel rich, or at least stable, like you finally got some breathing room. But then, you sit down on Sunday night to look at your budget, or maybe you're too scared to look at a budget so you just check your banking app, and you realize that between rent, the car payment, the student loans, that one night out that turned into a $150 tab, and the groceries that somehow cost double what they did 2 years ago, the money is already gone. It's not just that you're broke, it's that you worked 40, 50, maybe 60 hours this week, you traded your life energy for a paycheck, and the net result on your net worth is exactly zero. You tell yourself, okay, next month, I'm going to save. But then the check engine light comes on, or your friend gets married, or you just have a bad day and need the dopamine hit of ordering takeout, and suddenly that first dollar you promised to save evaporates. You look at people talking about compounding interest and investing millions, and it feels like they are speaking a different language because you can't even get the first dollar to stick to the bottom of the jar. That feeling of running on a hamster wheel, sprinting as hard as you can just to stay in the exact same spot, is what makes the very first step the hardest financial challenge you will ever face. My name is Bobby, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychology of wealth and why the math of money feels so different from the reality of living it. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right, working hard, trying to be responsible, but you just cannot seem to break past the gravitational pull of living paycheck to paycheck, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we aren't just talking about why saving is good. We are going to break down, mathematically and psychologically, why saving your very first dollar is actually harder than making your next $100,000. And once you understand the physics of this financial friction, you can finally stop spinning your wheels and start moving forward. Here's the thing that most financial gurus get wrong when they yell at you to stop buying lattes. They treat saving money as if it is purely a math problem, where income minus expenses equals savings, and if you aren't saving, you're just bad at math. But that is complete nonsense because the first dollar isn't about math. It is about physics, specifically the concept of static friction versus kinetic friction. If you have ever tried to push a stalled car in neutral, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The hardest part of pushing a 2-ton vehicle isn't keeping it moving once it's rolling. The hardest part is that first split second where you have to overcome the inertia of the car sitting still. When you have $0 saved, you are the stalled car. You have zero momentum. Every single dollar you try to keep requires a massive exertion of willpower because your entire financial ecosystem is designed to consume 100% of what you earn. The system, meaning your rent, your subscriptions, your habits, and even the algorithm on your phone showing you ads, is perfectly calibrated to ensure your account hits zero precisely before your next payday. To save that first dollar, you have to apply enough force to break the equilibrium of your entire life, which is infinitely harder than the person with $100,000 who just has to let their money sit there and collect 5% interest. Now, you might be thinking, Bobby, come on, it's just $1, how hard can it be? But let's look at the data because the numbers tell a really depressing but important story. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve regarding the economic well-being of U.S. households, nearly 40% of Americans would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense using cash or its equivalent, which means nearly half the country hasn't successfully saved their first dollar in a way that is accessible and sustainable. This isn't because 40% of people are lazy, it's because the financial gravity at the bottom is crushing. When you have zero savings, every minor bump in the road, a flat tire, a cavity, a parking ticket, isn't just an annoyance. It is a financial crisis that forces you to borrow money, pushing you into negative territory. This creates a trap where you are paying interest on past mistakes rather than earning interest on future goals. So when I say the first dollar is the hardest, I mean that the first dollar represents the moment you stop digging a hole and start building a foundation. And the energy required to switch from digging to building is massive compared to the energy required to just add another brick to a wall that is already standing. Here is what most people don't realize about the first dollar phase. It provides absolutely zero dopamine reward, and this is why so many people quit before they ever really start. When you have $100,000 invested and the market goes up 10% in a year, You just made $10,000 for doing absolutely nothing, which feels amazing, like you unlocked a cheat code for life. But when you save your first $1, or even your first $100, and the market goes up 10%, you made $10, or 10 cents. You sacrificed that dinner out, you skipped the concert, you wore the old shoes, and your reward was basically a rounding error that doesn't even buy you a sandwich. The effort to reward ratio at the beginning is terrible. You are putting in 100% of the effort for 0.001% of the results. This is the valley of despair in the financial journey. You are doing all the hard work, making all the sacrifices, fighting all the peer pressure to spend, and you have almost nothing to show for it visually. The next $100,000 is easier not just because of compound interest, which we will get to, but because by that point, the money is working for you. Right now, for that first dollar, you are working for the money, and you are fighting against a lifetime of consumer programming that tells you spending is happiness and saving is deprivation. Let's get into the actual mathematics of why this feels so impossible, and I want to introduce a concept I call financial escape velocity. When you are starting from zero, the mathematical reality is that your personal savings rate is the only engine you have, and that engine is powered entirely by your sweat equity. Look at it this way. If you have $0 invested, and the stock market has the greatest year in history, going up 30%, your net worth grows by exactly $0. The market performance is irrelevant to you. At this stage, 100% of your wealth accumulation must come from the gap between what you earn and what you burn. If you want to save $1,000, you have to physically work enough hours to earn that $1,000 after taxes and after survival expenses. But let's flip the script to the guy with $100,000. If he has that money in a simple index fund and the market does a standard 10% year, his money generated $10,000. That is roughly $833 a month. Think about how many hours you have to work to save $833 of pure profit after your bills are paid. For many people, that is 40 or 50 hours of labor. The person with the $100,000 got that labor for free. This is why the next $100,000 is easier, because you essentially have a silent employee, your capital, working a part-time job alongside you. But when you are saving that first dollar, you are the only employee. You are doing the heavy lifting alone, and that is why the physical burden of that first step feels exponentially heavier than the later steps. But the math isn't even the biggest problem. The real villain here, the thing that keeps you at zero, is a psychological principle called Parkinson's Law. Originally, this law stated that work expands to fill the time available for its completion, but in personal finance, it translates to expenses always rise to meet income. Have you ever noticed that when you were in college making $15,000 a year, you were broke, and now maybe you're making $50,000 or $80,000 a year, and you are still broke? Logically, that makes no sense. If you could survive on $15,000, you should be saving $35,000 a year now, right? But you aren't. And you aren't because of lifestyle creep, which is the financial manifestation of Parkinson's Law. As soon as you get a raise, your brain instantly normalizes the new income level. You upgrade the apartment, you lease a slightly nicer car, you switch from Pabst Blue Ribbon to craft cocktails, and you convince yourself that these are needs. This forces your savings rate back down to zero. To save that first dollar, you have to actively fight against Parkinson's Law. You have to artificially create scarcity in a world that is begging you to indulge. The person with $100,000 has usually already built the muscle to fight this law. They have established a standard of living lower than their income. But for you, starting out, you are fighting the biological urge to consume resources now rather than store them for a future you haven't met yet. Now you might be thinking, okay, Bobby, but I don't buy fancy cars, I'm just paying for groceries and rent, so Parkinson's Law doesn't apply to me. But here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, a little scary. The economy is actually structured to weaponize your psychology against you to ensure you never save that first dollar. Companies spend billions of dollars on algorithms designed to identify exactly when you are vulnerable to spending. They know when you've just been paid, they know your location, they know what you've been browsing. They are experts at extracting that first dollar before it hits your savings account. When you try to save $100, You aren't just fighting your own desires. You are fighting a team of PhD data scientists at Amazon and Google whose sole job is to move money from your pocket to their shareholders. That first dollar is the most contested dollar in existence. Everyone wants it. Your landlord wants it, the grocery store wants it, Netflix wants it. Once you have $100,000 locked away in a 401k or an IRA, it's safer, it's harder to spend. But that loose cash in your checking account, that is sitting in the kill zone. It is liquid, it is accessible, and the friction to spend it is non-existent. Overcoming that accessibility is a massive behavioral hurdle that most people simply never clear. This brings us to the concept of financial drag. Imagine you are trying to sprint, but you are running through waist-deep water. That is what debt does to your ability to save the first dollar. Most people trying to start their savings journey aren't actually starting at zero. They are starting at negative $10,000 or negative $50,000 due to student loans or credit cards. So mathematically, every dollar you save isn't actually making you richer. It's just making you less poor. And psychologically, that is devastating. It is demoralizing to throw $500 at a credit card bill and see the balance only go down by $300 because of interest. It feels like shoveling sand into the ocean. This lack of visual progress is why so many people give up. When you are building the next $100,000, you see the graph go up. It's exciting. It triggers dopamine. When you are saving the first dollar while in debt, the graph just looks less scary. It's relief, not excitement. And human beings will always work harder for excitement than they will for relief. This is why the first dollar requires a completely different mindset. You have to fall in love with the boring, painful process of getting back to zero before you can ever dream of getting to $1 million. Here is the brutal truth that hurts to hear but sets you free. You are likely not broke because you don't know how to save. You are broke because you are human, and humans are terrible at prioritizing the future over the present. We call this the behavioral gap. It's the massive canyon between knowing you should save $500 and actually physically transferring that money when you could use it to buy a weekend trip or a new gadget. Most financial advice fails because it assumes you are a robot who will always make the logical choice. But you aren't a robot. You are a biological machine designed to survive today, not optimize a portfolio for 30 years from now. When you have $0 saved, the behavioral gap is at its widest because the feedback loop is broken. You sacrifice today, and your life doesn't look any different tomorrow. This is why we have to stop relying on willpower. Willpower is a battery, and by the time you get home from work, deal with your boss, sit in traffic, and figure out dinner, your battery is dead. Relying on willpower to save that first dollar is a guaranteed strategy for failure. We need to build a system that saves the money for you, even when, especially when, you don't feel like it. Action. Step 1. Install a psychological circuit breaker. Automation. So how do we actually do this? The first step is to install what I call a psychological circuit breaker. You need to remove your human brain from the equation entirely. If you have to manually log into your bank app, select transfer, type in an amount, and hit confirm to save money, you are going to lose. That is 4 points of friction where your brain can say, maybe next week. You need to set up an automatic transfer for the day after your paycheck hits, and I don't care if it is only $20. The amount matters less than the mechanism. By automating it, you are paying your future self before your current self has a chance to ruin the plan. You are essentially treating your savings like a tax, something that is taken before you even see it. When the money never hits your checking account, you don't feel the loss of it. You adjust your spending to what is left. This forces Parkinson's law to work for you instead of against you. Your expenses will shrink to meet your slightly lower available income. This isn't about discipline. It's about designing an environment where discipline isn't required. Action Step 2. The 1% aggregation strategy. Now, you might be thinking, Bobby, I literally have $0 wiggle room. I can't automate anything. I hear you. And that brings us to the 1% aggregation strategy. We often fail to save the first dollar because we think the first dollar has to be $1,000 to matter. We set the bar so high that we trip over it. Instead, I want you to look at your last 3 months of spending and find the leakage, the small, mindless transactions that provide almost zero value to your life. I'm not talking about the latte if you love the latte. I'm talking about the subscription you forgot you had, the extra data on your phone plan you don't use, the convenience fees on food delivery apps. Recent studies show the average American spends over $200 a month on subscription services, and nearly half of them underestimate how much they are actually paying. If you can reclaim just 1% of your income from this junk spending, that is your seed money. It doesn't have to be massive. If you make $3,000 a month, 1% is $30. Start there. Prove to yourself that you can keep $30. The psychological win of seeing a balance that isn't zero is infinitely more valuable than the $30 itself because it breaks the identity of I'm a person who can't save. Action. Step 3. Gamify the friction. Finally, you need to gamify the friction. Since saving the first dollar gives you no dopamine, you have to manufacture it. We live in a world of visual progress bars, video games, fitness rings on our watches, download bars. We love seeing things fill up. You need to make your savings visual. Do not just look at a digital number on a screen. It feels fake. Get a physical jar or print out a chart to stick on your fridge. Every time you save $10, color in a square. Put a marble in the jar. It sounds childish, but it works because it makes the invisible act of saving visible. You are hacking your brain's reward system. When you are saving your first $1,000, you are in the grind phase of the video game. It's repetitive and boring. By creating a visual tracker, you are giving yourself a mini reward every time you make a good choice. This helps bridge the gap until the compound interest kicks in later. You are essentially retraining your brain to get a hit of dopamine from keeping money rather than spending it. And once that switch flips, once you start getting a rush from seeing your net worth go up instead of your sneaker collection growing, the game is won. That is the moment the friction disappears and the momentum takes over. To truly understand why you cannot give up right now, I want you to think about the space shuttle. It is a marvel of engineering, but it has a very specific problem to solve. Gravity. When a rocket sits on the launch pad, it is fighting the maximum amount of atmospheric resistance and gravitational pull it will ever face. To get that massive machine off the ground and into orbit, the engines have to burn nearly 90% of their total fuel just to travel the first few miles. Think about that. 90% of the energy is gone before it even really gets anywhere. If you were watching the fuel gauge, you would panic. You would think, we are burning everything we have and we are barely moving. But that massive expenditure of energy is the only way to break escape velocity. Once that rocket hits orbit, it can travel around the entire planet at 17,000 miles per hour using almost zero fuel. It just glides. Your financial life operates on the exact same physics. Right now, if you are struggling to save your first dollar or your first $10,000, you are in the atmosphere. You are burning 90% of your mental and emotional fuel just to fight the gravity of bills, debt, and temptation. It feels like you are burning out because you are burning out. But you have to understand that this intensity is temporary. You are not designed to burn this much fuel forever. You are just trying to get to orbit. Most people look at the fuel gauge, get scared, cut the engines, and crash back down to Earth. They resign themselves to a life of gravity. I am telling you to keep the throttle pinned. Keep saying no to the things you can't afford. Keep driving the old car. Keep manually transferring that $50. You are burning fuel to buy your freedom later. There is a famous quote by the late great investor Charlie Munger that sums this up perfectly, and it's become somewhat of a legendary rule in finance. He said, "The first $100,000 is a betch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit." He didn't say that because $100,000 is a magic number that buys happiness. He said it because that is the moment you reach orbit. That is the moment where your money starts making more money than you can save from your paycheck. That is when the math flips in your favor. But you will never ever get to that ease off the gas phase if you don't survive the launch. The first dollar is harder than the next $100,000 because the first dollar is the spark that ignites the engine. Without it, the rocket never leaves the ground. So, if you are watching this and you feel defeated because your savings account is sitting at 2 digits, or maybe even negative digits, I want you to know that you are in the hardest part of the movie right now. The beginning is supposed to be hard. If it were easy, everyone would be wealthy and nobody would be stressed. The resistance you feel isn't a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are fighting gravity. Do not let the silence of the early days fool you. Just because you don't see the compound interest explosion yet doesn't mean the process isn't working. You are laying the foundation, brick by boring brick. And one day you are going to look up and you won't be pushing the car anymore. You'll be driving it. But you have to push through the friction today to get to the momentum tomorrow. If you are ready to stop burning fuel and finally start building that launch pad, do me a favor. Comment down below with launch mode so I know you are committed to saving that first difficult dollar. And if you want to know exactly where to put that first $1,000 once you save it so it actually starts growing, you need to watch this video right here, Bobby points to screen, where I break down the best high-yield accounts for beginners. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos that help you master your money. I'm Bobby. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.